Good evening, everybody. We're going to start the official part of welcoming you all at a session organized by Rethinking Economics and Imagine Life. Rethinking Economics Antwerp was created a year ago in summer. But of course, Rethinking Economics as an organization exists already a lot longer. It started in the UK by students and teachers asking for another way of teaching economics in business schools and universities. They were not happy with the fact that the way it was being taught was pretty from one point of view only, quite often a very neoliberal view. So they asked, because there are different kinds of economics, and they wanted to have a broader education in different formats. And in the meantime, Rethinking Economics is a global organization and is present in quite many countries around the world. In Belgium, it started in Ghent and Leuven, Brussels, and now also in Antwerp. As a starting point, we decided to organize different sessions. We had a big one in which we invited 5 thinkers to talk about how should an economist look like? What kind of economists do we need for a thriving world? Which was a very interesting session. And then we started with having individuals invited for a session like this evening. And we had one which was about Drivability by Michelle Holliday, who wrote a book, The Age of Drivability. And actually, this is the theme of the sessions we are planning now. And we're very happy and very pleased that tonight, our second session on Drivability, we can invite, or we will have you listen to two people who author a book that will be published in March, which is called Drive. So really in line with this evening's topic. And in order to start introducing the speakers, which will be Shinta Oosterwaal, who is here, as well as Kees Klomp. And they are actually, you can call them mom and dad of a yet-to-be-born baby book about economics with Drive as a title. So the parents of the book are here. So very happy and pleased to welcome them. So I'm going to ask first to Shinta if she can introduce herself shortly and explain what, according to you, is most relevant for us to know in this setting of you as a person, about your experiences and the things that you really enjoy doing. So Shinta, the floor is yours for a short introduction and the link with the topic of Drivability.
Thank you, Eddie. Very nice to be here. Hi all.
Hello.
Nice of you to share the evening with us. I didn't grow up in nature, but I always felt a really deep calling. So when I was a very young girl, I started to become a ranger for the World Wildlife Fund. And I sold little pieces of rainforest to people, so it wouldn't fall into the hands of big corporations. And that sense of service that really stuck with me, that stayed with me even throughout studying economics. I trained in business economics and developmental economics. And I really wanted to change the world. So I worked for a long time at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands, mainly working on equitable economic development in fragile and developing states. During that time, I also trained out of personal interest, out of interest in spirituality, as a therapist. And when I finalized that, everything fell together for me. So at that instance, I had the tools to deal with global issues as well as personal issues, and not surprisingly, they are intertwined. So that's what really fascinates me. And what I'm finding more and more is that our economy is a fragmented system, which comes out of fragmented mind states. And thriving economists, to me, make thriving economies. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. So you've been trained, or you studied economy in the beginning. You're an economist from education point of view.
Yeah.
That was classical economics, or neoliberal economics, or was it So what kind of economics did you teach or did you learn?
Well, all of that, all of the above.
All of the above. Okay, thank you.
I actually
Okay,
studies in economics, so I was very, very enthusiastic about it at that time.
fantastic. Okay, let's move to Kees. Kees, can you briefly introduce yourself and your link with the topic of tonight?
Yes, of course, my pleasure. Thanks for being here, folks. Really nice to be in your midst. I think I need my story starts with my grandpa. I've grown up with a really special grandpa. He was a harbor laborer in the Netherlands, and as you might already think, he was a true harbor worker in the sense that he was a socialist, a hardline socialist, to be bluntly honest. And I strongly connected with my granddad. So from a very young age, we had talks about politics, about solidarity, about taking care of other people. So as long as I can remember, I've been a very much socially engaged person, but I've always been more people oriented than I was nature or environmental oriented because of my granddad. So because of my interest, I studied political science at the University of Amsterdam. And I remained a socially engaged person for many years, and also very active in that field. But to be bluntly honest, I turned a quite radical environmentalist about 7-8 years ago when my son was born. So I had 3 kids, 2 grown-up daughters, 24, 23, and then my wife and I had a big surprise 7 years ago, and it became really personal that we are facing system change, and that really helped me to become basically to turn into an activist, even more than I was before that. And I wouldn't call myself an economist, but certainly an activist.
Okay, and how did the two of you meet? Because there has been some synergy between the two of you. That's obvious. So perhaps you can share the moment of meeting and then the decision to start working together. How did that happen?
Wow, shit! You want to go first?
If you want to share that, it's perhaps private.
Yeah, of course we will. Of course, of course.
Well, we met actually because I approached Kees and I said, I have these ideas about doing een promotieonderzoek. I lost the word in English.
PhD, yeah.
PhD. And writing a book, and I had all kinds of ideas. And I said, Kees, do you want to be my mentor? And do you want to guide me through this whole field a little bit? And we had a really nice cup of coffee. And that was the start about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And then recently, so the most recent project that we embarked on together is the book. We embarked on it together in May, June, somewhere, in the midst of the pandemic, actually.
Yeah.
And what was your common intention with the book?
Well, the very first intention, but that only lasted for a couple of days actually, was to create a reader, because I've been teaching at business schools for years, and I always was really unsatisfied with the fact that you have the neoclassical or the neoliberal economic books that are being treated as this is economics, and then there is the other stuff, and when you're really lucky, you would find an enlightened teacher or a lecturer that confronted these kids with Kate Raworth, and then there was nothing anymore. And I knew that there were stacks of interesting thinkers out there with all great work, also books, So the general idea in first instance was to compile those stories into a book, to write it, to basically write summaries, to at least give these students some sense of a broader perspective on economics. And then when I approached Kate Rayward to ask her if she was okay that we would summarize her book, she basically said, well, maybe it's a nicer idea if I write a new an essay, because everybody has read my book by now. So wouldn't it be more interesting if we would go specifically into the hashtag how? So how do you manifest the donut economy? Because this is where I'm at this moment. And yeah, and then a whole lot of stuff happened, but we basically it went viral. I think that's the proper the proper word, isn't it? Basically, yeah, all our heroes wanted to join.
It's like a snowball effect, I think. Yeah.
Yes, but it would be very much over exaggerated to even suggest that we had some sort of clear-cut plan to make this happen. It happened, and of course after that a whole lot of work it was needed to get things going. But a lot of it was the universe. It was spontaneous combustion.
Synchronicity to some extent.
Yes. Yes.
And what was the real urge for you to start writing it? I mean, why was it? And it apparently was urgent. So why was that for you the case?
Shinta, you want to go first?
Well, I think you explained a whole lot of it, and I just wanted to add, you know, during this pandemic, I have the feeling that people either felt inactivated or very activated, so very creative and productive to make this change happen. And I think we certainly were on wave number 2. So I think that helped a lot also. And it was also a time that we both realized, you know, we know so much already. We don't need a new book full of warnings and full of data. We know what's not working, and we avail of the knowledge already that's helpful to move forward. And we have to get that into the boardrooms, into the classrooms, into the cradles of change that are there in society already. So that was a main reason. And then also, the book is called Thrive, Fundamentals to a New Economy. So we really wanted to stress the fact that it's not in the instrumentality of economics, but it's more in the story that we tell ourselves about economics. And we really wanted to get people to that level. And now just seems such a potent time to do so. A painful but potent time. So yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to add that I've always been very much inspired by the work of Charles Eisenstein. I think a lot of you people will know him, and one of his most urgent lectures is when Charles differentiates symptoms from systems from stories. Yeah? So he says symptoms rest on top of systems, and systems rest on top of stories. And what really drives me is the fact that to get across that economics is a narrative. So the way that we treat economics is based upon a narrative, nothing more, nothing less. And the fact that neoclassical economics is treated as an objective, empirical science is pure bullshit. And it's a tremendous drive for me to show that there are many other ways of looking at economics and create a new narrative, especially in this time and day when the current narrative is going down the drain.
How would you describe the current narrative? The one that is probably being taught the most in business schools and universities?
Utility-based, homo economics, growth, money. Well, I can go on for rational, free markets, and all of that is bullshit. Pardon me for my words.
For your English,
sorry.
yeah.
Sorry.
So from utility-based economics, so what would you like to have instead? What's the new narrative that all these different people you invited to share articles in your book, what's the dominant new narrative they're bringing to us?
Shit.
Yeah. So if you would say that economics is the mechanism of utility and self-interest, most of the contributors to our book, it's more than 20 actually, so there's quite a lot of information there. They all propose the opposite. And with the opposite, I mean they all propose deeper human values. So instead of promoting self-interest, they promote human nature, cooperation, caring for each other, compassion, creativity. And then also, if you take the utility function of economics that's seen in traditional economics, in that sense too, they propose the other, the flip side of that same coin is to move, instead of viewing nature as something that we use and that we can extract from, as something we can have reverence for and that we can have a partnership with and be in co-creation with. Now, this is the super short answer to your question, but of course, themes like degrowth will be there. Circular economy, which is a little bit more mainstream as an idea, but there's also the reinstallment of traditional values, such as indigenomics, indigenous values that have an economic expression as well. And then there's feminism too, the reinstallment of feminine values in society, as also a way of looking at Earth, being a woman. So yeah, the list is very, very long. And what we want to do is to make very clear to our readers that it's possible to give new roots to our economic system. So as Schumacher always has stressed, that we should have an economy be instructed by a meta-economy. That's the level where we want our readers to get to. So what do we want to have our economy informed by? What values, what belief system, what do we find important to live by? And then of course, the highest possible aspiration might be to thrive.
Yeah, thank you. That brings me to my next question, because I think Kees told us that thrivability or thriving should be the start from where we look at economics. Mm-hmm. How would you define, or what does thrivability and thriving mean for you? And why is it so important for us as a society?
Yeah, so I think the main importance of thrive and thrivability is that it is life-centric or species-centric. So it's not human-centric, and it's not even humanity-centric. It is beyond humans. So it puts life in the first place, the living principles. What Schumacher calls meta-economics. So it acknowledges the fact that ecology trumps economy. And that by itself already is revolutionary, of course. And that is also the reason why we emphasize on the word thrivability instead of sustainability, because sustainability is the current frame of the word is very much geared toward sustaining also business as usual. So it's about companies doing their utmost best to minimize their harm. But it's also about, the word sustain in sustainability is also about sustaining the human-centered perspective. So it's trying to take care of the planet and still keep on going with your company as normal, as business as usual. And so it's, in my opinion, it's about incremental change. Whereas I think drivability starts with systems value, with thinking transformational, thinking beyond humans, thinking beyond humanity. And don't know if you're familiar with the word, but the wonderful folks at R 3.0, Rolf Turman and Bill Bau, they use the word rights holdership instead of stakeholdership or shareholdership. And I think rights holdership is the key to drivability. Rights holdership means that there are zillions of beings out there that have no stake or no influence on business whatsoever, but they are being influenced by business. And I think drivability is about taking these beings into account. So it's geared towards system value, and you can only approach system value if you are willing to go beyond your own interest. You can't proceed your own interest and take care for the system. It's just impossible. So that's why we like to use the word drivability instead of sustainability, because sustainability is very much framed as enlightened self-interest. It's still about profits. It's still about shareholders, or in the best possible case, maybe stakeholders, but it most certainly isn't about system value.
Okay, wow. In the meantime, if you have questions, audience, feel free to use the chat box to share them. So if I can summarize, you replace sustainability by drivability. You move from human-centered to life-centered. The ecology trumps the economy, and you move from shareholder to stakeholder to right holders
Yes.
as an evolution. And I don't know, maybe Shinta wants to add stuff to what Kees has been explaining now.
Yeah, maybe I do. If we look at the fact that production has risen while biodiversity has fallen very deeply, then we could really easily conclude that our current system is life undermining as it is extractive. So that invokes a mind state for people, well, for all of us actually, for all living beings, that is a survival mode. So at this moment, we are in survival mode. And it's really amazing that we would continue. It's amazing to me that we would continue this way. It's like Otto Scharmer, who says, why do we keep creating results that nobody wants? Because nobody would agree to this, right? And we know our economy is embedded in nature. Its primary resource is nature, and nature is actually the primary economy in that sense. So it's all the more reason to move to maybe not call it the level, but the dimension that is now really being missed in economics thinking, I think, and that's the existential dimension. Is how do we move from survival to thriving? That's a more of an existential choice to make than an instrumental thing to do. It's the most logical thing to do if we mentally approach it. And then also thriving to, just wrote it down in the book, I think it's the original intent of life. So it's a natural process, more an organic process. So we can, go with that flow. But we try to keep a living system in all its dynamics. We try to move it into a linear system, like in a box or something. And I kind of laugh about it, but it's painful, of course. But it's also kind of liberating to see through that madness. So it's just a very natural and logical thing to seek for thriving. I think in renewing our economies.
Yeah, I think this is also a very fundamental dimension that Shinta here is naming, because we as humans, we invented ethics, morals, because we need to make distinctions between good and bad. And the interesting thing is that thriving is actually the language of Mother Nature. So it's in nature there isn't good and bad. There's only input and output. So a thriving biosphere is actually the living proof that we're doing the right thing. So whereas we as human beings constantly have moral debates about economic systems and about companies and etc., nature answers in the health of the interconnectedness, one could say. And thriving is the ultimate proof of a living system that's been treated right. So and therefore it is, well, you could say the ultimate end.
Okay, maybe a small sidestep. Kees, when I discovered or learned about your existence, it was mainly because you published a lot about the purpose economy.
Yes.
Is there a link between drivability and the purpose economy? How do you see that?
Yes, there is. Purpose and purpose economy is like sustainability framed by a large part of the business community because it sells well. A lot of companies now have purposes and do pledges. But basically they keep on doing whatever they did. They just use fancier words because in most cases pledges and purposes are just fancy words on a website.
So it's greenwashing?
Yes, and that's also, yeah, so now the business domain is now also being enriched with purpose washing as a new word next to greenwashing. And quite rightfully so. For me, purpose has always been something quite different than the way it has been framed in the general business domain. Because for me, there's an important distinction between the word meaning and purpose, and they are being used next to each other and as one and the same thing, and they're actually not. So meaning is something that happens in the penthouse of the Maslow pyramid, and I know we can have a long debate about the Maslow pyramid and its academic validity, but just for argument's sake, let's use it. And meaning is associated with post-materialistic values, wanting to do good, want to transcend itself. And actually, a lot of the stuff that you hear about purpose is actually about meaning. So it would be much more correct to talk about meaningful companies and especially millennials searching for meaning, which is a subjective, individual, spiritual experience where you find, when you experience that you do the stuff that matters, that goes beyond yourself, you experience a sense of meaning. And in my opinion, purpose takes place at the bottom of the Maslow pyramid. And what I mean with the bottom is I think there is a layer underneath the physiological needs that I like to call the existential needs, just like Shinta did earlier on. Because purpose is about system thinking. It's about acknowledging the fact that the reality of life is an interdependent, interconnected relationship network. And we, as modern human beings, have completely outgrown that wisdom. Whereas the indigenous people, they totally understand and get this interconnected, interdependent network that is the ultimate reality. But we, as so-called educated people with all the industrial and technological progress, we have completely lost that knowledge, that sense of connectedness. And so in my opinion, and this is the stuff that I'm working now on as well as a professor at the University of Applied Science in Rotterdam. This is one of my main subjects for my research, is that purpose is actually a universal experience. So rather than meaning, which is strictly individual. So all you guys here, you all have a unique sense of meaning because it completely is depending on your personality, your life, your passions, your dreams. But purpose is a universal experience. The moment that you connect with this living reality, the living principle reality, with the interconnectedness of life, you experience purpose. It's something completely different. So there, where meaning is ethical, it's about doing good as a virtue. Purpose is doing good is the norm, because the system is the norm. So there is no I, there is no you, there is only us. Ubuntu.
Yeah. In the meantime, I see people posting some questions. I'll come to them in a minute. I first want to ask our two guests. So, what for you is then a thriving society? How would it look like? How would you describe a thriving society?
Well, well, you know how this creation process goes, right? It's firstly, it's like a sensing of something. So that's, you know, a value, you sense it before you know it, before it's materialized. And then it starts to materialize a little bit more into images, and then come the words, and then very later on, then come the structures and the action plans and the strategies and everything. So I think that with asking the question at this moment during the pandemic, this question is so often asked, do we find this normal, and what's the new normal? So we find ourselves completely in a reimagining phase. So if you ask me that question, I felt a need to say, you know, in my imagination, a thriving world would be a world that is covered in green more than in concrete. And it would be deeply democratic. So I would take care of the natural resources in my area together with my neighbors. And it would feel like I would feel when I'm tending to my garden. I would feel a relationship to what is nourishing me, but also not in only a physical way, but also in an emotional way, in a spiritual way. And then also, it's a creative society. So, well, punt.
Okay, thank you. I think this, you triggered my imagination. I saw me running around in green and connecting with locals and using local resources. Yeah. Kees, you want to, and what is it for you? What's the image that it is for you, trying society?
I think I think the main importance is, and it might sound really simple, but I think it's very profound, is it is well-being based instead of welfare based. So I think one of the biggest problems of our current system is that we associate welfare with well-being, whereas it's something completely different. And to be bluntly correct, the Netherlands, and I know in Belgium isn't anything different. We actually treat welfare as well-being. So we say, as long as the economy grows, the country is doing fine, and if the economy doesn't grow, we're in shit. So it's based upon the assumption that well-being is something that is derived from welfare, that you need welfare first to create well-being. And I think the most important difference between a growth-based, a growing society, which we're living now, and a thriving society is that we cut through that narrative, because it is just delusional. And well-being has to do with social and environmental qualities, biodiversity, soil quality, air quality, inclusiveness, care, all these huge elements which we all know and acknowledge are fundamental to a happy, healthy life. but they're all in our current society treated as put on the second or third place, because we need to let the economy grow. We need welfare, because without welfare, we aren't able to create well-being. And I think the most important thing that will change in the next couple of years, because I really think, and I have to totally agree with Shinta, we can only fantasize about it, but I think that we are in a systemic collapse, and we will face system change. I really don't think that this current system is ready to keep going in this way. I really think we are about to derail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, both of you, your view on how a thriving society would look like. Before I go to the questions, and I see there are really good questions coming from the audience, a final question from my side, linking it back to education, because we are rethinking economics. We were talking about economics in universities. So what do you think should change? What is your proposal? What should young people in business universities and colleges, what should they learn?
Do you have an hour?
You have 3 minutes to make a curricula.
Shin, if you start, I will pick up a book and I will show you what I think should happen. But you start.
Okay.
And I think we'll be very complementary. So I think that current economics thinking is instilling something in the minds of future leaders that is, as I said, extractive and life undermining. So that's just a no-go, right? So, and then if you asked this question, and what would be fundamental to me is firstly that economics is being taught. You know, I think it needs to be experienced. And we keep on, well, I don't know if we keep on, it's not very mainstream thinking yet, but if we want an economy that is rooted in real life, then we really need to give these students a different experience. That's what I think firstly. And then also, if we want to honor the fact that our economy is embedded in nature, we need to teach it in nature too. So there's, it's becoming more popular to have these nature schools in the Netherlands, but also, of course, everywhere. But to be in this relationship hands-on with nature makes the experience so exquisite, I think, that is really needed to make the renewal happen. And then also we treat economics as something that is absolute. It has these scientific aspirations as being an absolute science that follows these natural laws. Well, it isn't, of course, so we really need to rethink the fact that it's more a design science that needs to be interdisciplinary, that just standard needs to borrow from anthropology, biology, ecology, psychology, well, you name it. And then also I think it needs to be experimental, much more. I can see, Kees just said, we can fantasize about it, but I think it's fantasize is not the right word. You know, we know what we have to change. So what I see in front of my mind's eye is laboratory settings of students just trying stuff out, making lean and mean creative solutions and seeing if it works. Yeah, what did I write down? I wrote down, as economists, we're spectators of life. We need to build a relationship. That's something which is very interesting in David Brooks' book, The Second Mountain. He speaks of moving to the second mountain, so leaving the idea of hyper-individuality and moving into a mind state of more relationality. So we need to really become people in relationship to each other, to ourselves, to each other, but also to something that's outside of us. Well, as far we thought until now that it was outside of us, nature. And then also we need to integrate, I think, in economics teaching and business, this personal development, this personal journey. We really need to facilitate that, I think, for if we want wise future leaders.
Okay, thank you. Experience evidence-based, nature-based, interdisciplinary, experimental, relationality. So words that really resonate quite nicely also with me. Kees, you have your book,
Yes.
show it.
So, can you guys see this?
Yes, the ecology book.
Yes. So that is the economy book that these students have to read.
Okay,
So,
that's the short answer.
yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, they will next year at the University of Applied Science in Rotterdam, because they basically sort of gave me the key to work on the program. And I seriously have put this book on the list as the first book they will read when they start their study, because I think that is the problem. You can't change students at the end of their study. You have to start
from in the beginning, in the first year. Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to move towards the questions of the audience. There is Hubert asking, what about global government initiatives to link government budget and policies to the SDGs, so the Sustainable Development Goals and Millennium Goals? Is this a promising avenue? So a question about SDGs and yeah.
Yeah, what about it?
Sorry? Do you think it's good that governments actually use these United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and start working with it?
Well, I think the SDGs, well, let's start on a positive note. The SDGs are a fundamental success in getting people acquainted with goals that go beyond economics. So poverty, hunger, clean oceans, climate change, la-di-da, fantastic. The only problem is we will never ever reach the goals in the current system, not one of them. Well, maybe with the exception of goal number 6 or 7, which is economic growth. So there's nothing wrong with the SDGs, and there's nothing wrong with companies or governments committing themselves to whatever goals they commit to. The only problem is that if we don't change the system, we will never ever reach the goals. So I personally think it won't be very long before we come to the conclusion that none of the goals will ever be met in the current system. So I think it's more interesting maybe to see whatever we need to get to the goals. And then it becomes uneasy. Because the reason that these goals are so popular in governments is that they don't change anything.
Okay, that's a clear answer. Shinta, you want to add something to it? Or I have another question from the same person about the Tobin tax. Should we introduce a Tobin tax because we can use the money perhaps to do something based on social and ecological parameters? So perhaps it's a question of money. We don't have enough money to make that change. And taxing the rich people may help to provide us the money to change our systems.
So what is the question here then?
What about the Tobin tax approach? Do you think it's good that governments also introduce a kind of Tobin tax to drive contribution towards SDGs? Well, you're questioning SDGs, so.
Having that global agenda, such as the SDGs, so maybe I have something to add to Kees's answer. There's nothing wrong with that inherently, to have this global agenda, to want to work towards change. But mixing politics with change is very difficult. As an institution, it wants to remain what it is. So it's already inherently quite flawed. That's very difficult about dealing with the SDGs, because on a fundamental existential level, they do make sense. Of course, what we need to do, this report, Living Planet report from the Worldwide Fund, it just came out, says we need this integrated approach. We need to do conservation, but we also need to become wiser about our production, about our consumption. So, and I don't see becoming wiser, I don't see that reflected in the SDG framework as it is now, and there's a more increasingly louder call for leadership. So so maybe it will it will be facilitated through the framework, but it's not it's not an institutionalized idea to evolve as a society towards a more sustainable society. So that's really something that's lacking. And this is my way of thinking. So if you ask me, if we invest more money, it doesn't matter. It's, you know, if the fundamental leverage is not there, or something fundamental is missing, I shouldn't say it's not there. Instrumentality, yes, that's there.
But it's perhaps not life-centric. It's still very human-centric or business-centric.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
There is
and it's also this isn't specifically explicitly in the goals, but it is in policy. Is that it is, well, I can only come up with the word delusional, but it's of course delusional to think that we can grow out of a system which main problem is growth. So we always constantly reinvesting money to attain growth, whilst the whole problem is growth. And that is also a big assumption behind the SDGs. So it is a fantastic collection of goals, but it's all driven by the same engine that this system needs, which is economic growth. And economic growth is the mother of all evils. Okay.
Thank you for that. We also have somebody from Restory. Restory is a platform that is publishing very interesting articles. If you don't know it, Google Restory. Misha asks or refers to Thomas Kolster, calls that the hero trap. Companies now, according to him, should ask themselves, who do you help people become?
Yeah.
Love it.
That's a beautiful... Well, I think that the future for companies is actually twofold in that sense. It's how to help people become themselves, but also to become in themselves significant and relevant for society. So that same goes for their role in society. It's two-way.
Okay. There is a question which is linked to degrowth or growth. There are more people in the developing world than in the developed world. How can we give all the people roughly the same standard of living without growth? This is a question coming from, I think, a student of mine, which is actually a question a lot of youngsters ask. Okay,
yeah,
so how?
Highly dependent on what you think of standards. What is your definition of living standards?
Kevin, you want to explain?
He needs to plug in.
Sure. The standard that I have right now, living in Belgium, the life quality that I have with a decent job.
Well, one of the essays in our book is written by Catherine Verbeek. Catherine Verbeek is one of the initiators of the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, but she also wrote the book Economics of Arrival. And actually that book, Economics of Arrival, is a pathway to a worldwide approach that basically says, you know, we have overly mature economies in the first world, and to enable underdeveloped countries to gain economic growth, we as first world countries need to degrow to enable a worldwide balance. And I'm not completely sure what the percentage is, but I think she proposes somewhere in the area of a 25% decrease of GDP for countries like Belgium and the Netherlands. And if we do that on a global scale, then we would create a room for lots of countries, for instance, in Africa or in Southern America, to almost balance out with our current system. But the trick is, we have to degrow 25%. Well, Shinta can back me up on this. Shinta and I did a Economics for Change class a couple of weeks ago, where we invited a bunch of students, participants, to get acquainted with new economic thinkers, and a lot of them went down really well until we reached the point of Georges Callas and Jason Hickel and degrowth, and people panicked. They went completely berserk. It's really interesting to see what happens when you even mention the word degrowth. That you mention the fact that we won't continue with an economy that grows, but we will degrowth. From a narrative perspective, it seems like it's a too big a chunk to work with. So I think that is most probably the biggest challenge that we have, because we need to degrow in the West. We really need.
And Kevin, I called you a student, but I don't think you're a student of mine, correct?
No, but Kevin, if you want to read more, Catherine's book, Economics of Arrival, is a fantastic book, and it's really she really dives deep in this matter, and she has a very, in my opinion, a very substantial
Economics
vision
of what was it?
Yeah, we're going to post it in the chat. I think,
Okay.
I don't know, Catherine, if Xenia, if you can look up the book and post it in the chat so we can.
Catherine Trebeck, Economics of Arrival.
Yeah.
I think we can be really bluntly honest about answering this question, right? Because the question that Kevin poses, it's just impossible. We need 4 living systems, being Earths, to foresee in that kind of standard of living. So we really need to ask ourselves, what is a good standard? What is good enough as a standard of living? So what does it mean, dignified, to work from dignity or with dignity? Does it mean a certain salary? Does it mean the freedom to do what you really want to do? And what is the most value? But well, if we want to stick to the economic terms, if you want to distribute a certain standard, then we need to move towards a strategy of pre-distribution. So the vision of well-being for all invokes for a strategy that makes sure that all resources are pre-distributed, so not redistributed. And I think that is really important. It takes us back to the fundamentals that we are often speaking of today. If we want to thrive as a global society, then we really need to avail of this strategy.
And that's also, to elaborate a bit more on this. This is also something that Catherine did a lot of research on, and also published in a book. And she calls countries like the Netherlands and Belgium overdeveloped. And overdeveloped is a stage wherein welfare doesn't grow anymore in service of well-being, but at the expense of well-being. And just to give you an impression, the Netherlands, and I know Belgium is the same, has become overdeveloped in the 1960s. So for over 60 years, our economy has grown. In the Netherlands, our economy, compared with the 60s, has grown 300%. So we have gained 300% more welfare than we had in the 60s, but only at the expense of well-being. So when we think about degrowth, we think about, it's just impossible for us to come to grasp with the idea that we have to decrease our consumption pattern, that we have to decrease production pattern. The fact is that since the 1960s, we have only attained dumb growth, useless growth.
There is a question which can be added to it, is the ideas you're sharing with us about drivability and how to move from sustainability to drivability and more life-centric. how would you suggest to implement that practically? Or perhaps what is blocking us to move in that direction, and how can we make it happen? It's a difficult question, I think, but a good one.
Yeah, well, we just spoke a little bit about it. The Living Planet report says conserve biodiversity, so put all efforts towards that, and then rethink distribution and consumption towards sustainability. And I think that's only a beginning, because then we are not already thriving, we're just enabling the first steps towards thriving. But to remain this holding space for practices that are, what's the word, conducive for living systems to function optimally, that's what we need to put our efforts towards.
Okay, thank you. There is a question of Maxime, but I'm going to treat that question in a question I'm going to ask you all. I'm going to ask you 2 questions, of which I would like you to answer in the chat box. So go to the chat box, and I think I'm going to ask Xenia to share the 2 questions. And we're going to bring it back to economics and universities and what should be taught to people. So if we want to move towards this thriving society, which was described as vividly by our 2 speakers, what are assumptions, ideas in our current way of teaching economics? Or you can, if you can put yourself in a position of professor or teacher, your current way in economics that no longer serve us according to you. What should we get rid of? What assumptions and ideas should we leave behind us to move towards a thriving society? And I'm going to ask you to really use the chat box now, and whatever pops up in your mind as an answer on this question, to share it. So what are assumptions, ideas in our current way of teaching economics or in our current economics that no longer serve us according to you? So that money, okay. So our view of human nature, selfish and competitive, growth, measuring everything, utility, maximizing profits without taking into account all the implications. We should leave behind us compound interest. We should leave behind us free markets. We should leave behind us thinking linearly. We should leave behind us the view that human nature is selfish and competitive. Linear approach is coming back. Imperialism. Empiricalism, sorry. It's a 1-letter difference, but it is a difference. Yeah. So what else should we leave behind us? The idea of winning. Private property as a main principle to organize our life, we should leave behind us. Should leave behind us products with a short lifetime. Should leave behind us population growth. Okay. We should leave behind us outsourcing to cheaper countries like Bulgaria or others. Should leave behind us we should change the food industry. It's not leaving behind us. We should leave behind us the multiplicator approach in business. We should leave behind us institutional racism. We should leave behind us marketing, capitalism, patriarchy. I would like to move to the next question, which is of course linked to this one. What principles, what ideas? So we're going to stop what we should leave behind us, and we're going to move to the next question, namely, what principles and ideas should we introduce? Or what should we have more of? So we're going to move to what do we need more of now? Going back to basics, we should have We should have everyone involved in making the new world, so it should be an inclusive approach. We should have incentives to promote rational behavior, if that exists. We should start integrating. We should have more female leaders. We have them in Scotland, Iceland, New Zealand. We had them shortly in Belgium. We should introduce well-being and happiness factor in economic and political decision-making. We should serve. We should have life as primary principle. We should reevaluate social occupations and nature. We need more vegans. Growth, life centricity, green economics, inclusivity, practicing more mindfulness to get a better understanding of nature. A reevaluation of the educational system. We should talk about system values. Love. Transformational thinking. System thinking, love. Prime Minister Kees Klomp, okay, for the Netherlands, huh? Or carrying capacity. We should incorporate new ecological parameters in economics and politics. Pay it forward, the principle of pay it forward. Shinta for president. Resistance to toxic lobbying. Astrology as a science, life-centered design of everything. Okay, a quick feedback from the two of you, Kees and Shinta. When you read all this, what's your feedback? Briefly.
Personally, for me, the second part resonates instantly. So it proves that the general idea that Shinta and I had with Thrive is that we basically start with the fact that the system will change and that we only have to think of the new narrative. And what I see with the second part, as soon as you get into a positive mode by focusing on what we need, the mechanism changes. So, so I think that is really important because there's so much negativity around.
I like also what Steph is writing. We need nudges that push us towards drivability.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
we should
like
base our systems on collaborative and caring nature of human beings. Yeah. Shinta, in a minute, because I...
Yeah. Well, the second part is indeed very constructive. I want to write all of this down because it's also very confirmative of what we feel and really want this message to be spread throughout the book. I wanted to share something about the first bit. That one element that is really ingrained in our current economic thinking is dualism, the idea of dualism. And I think it is really very important that we have the saying in Dutch, right? Niets menselijks is ons vreemd. I have no idea how to translate this into English, but it's something like nothing. Well, I don't.
Nothing human is strange to us.
We're only human.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we came from a place, and the trick is to move beyond and then move forward. So I think to do away with a whole bunch of stuff that has served us in a way for a very long time is a waste of energy and a waste of time. But we really need to focus, as you can clearly now see with your questioning. If you focus on that second question, then the path, it reveals itself. It's a little bit philosophical, but you move away from dualism to more unity in our thinking. And I think that's really very important.
We will include this input in the recording. So the words that have been shared with us all will be part of the recording. I think Xenia, I look at her. Yeah. So it's not lost, and we're gonna use it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've been listening and arguing and discussing for about an hour and 5 minutes. What I would like to suggest now is I would like you to move into different breakout rooms. I see Sarah talking, but I can't hear you, so I don't know if you're talking to us. Okay. So the idea is that we're gonna put you in breakout rooms for roughly 20 minutes to have a discussion, because we know that you're all on your own sitting behind your computer screen and you feel lonely. Not only for that, I think it's also important that you share your ideas in a smaller group so that you can talk and dialogue. So we're going to send you in different breakout rooms with 2 questions. The first question, and Xenia is sharing it now, what parts of Kees and Shinta's ideas resonate with you? And the second question, how would you apply these ideas to you as a person or to your personal life, to the context you're at the moment in, if you're a student or professor or working in a company? So what parts of Kees and Shinta's ideas resonate with you? And how would you apply these ideas of moving towards drivability in your personal life? At the moment, it is 9:05. So let's say we give you till 21:30, which is a bit more than 20 minutes. We will call you back. So you will get an announcement that the rooms will close and that we expect you back in the main chat room. The idea is that one of you, if you find a volunteer, if not, you point one, shares a bit what was discussed. Okay? So, and then we will have a kind of wrap up of the discussions you had in the different rooms with some closing remarks, and we will make an announcement also about next steps we're going to take. Can we still see the 2 questions, please?
Welkom.
It was too short. We were not
Dat was
finished.
maar 15 minuten, geen 20 minuten.
Ja,
Dat was terug voor 5 minuten.
we hebben eigenlijk 5 minuten te weinig gekregen.
Jawel.
Normaal gezien was het half.
Yeah, it's my fault.
Eddie, tell me.
Yeah, I said, okay, we're only 4 people. Maybe we can do it 15 minutes, but we can't. It was not possible.
En je neemt je economische taak veel te serieus.
Yes,
Je zit veel te veel op efficiency.
Yeah, scarcity, efficiency, and so on and so forth. Okay, anyway, we're all back. So what did you discuss? I know you didn't discuss everything yet, perhaps not the 2 questions. Perhaps I hope everybody was able to speak a bit. So what were the outcomes out of the chat discussion you had?
From our group, I think we need to let Arne speak because he only got 1 minute.
Okay, Arne. Unmute yourself. Yep.
Yeah, what I was talking about is that basically during the COVID crisis, Joris mentioned that the youth, the younger generation, wanted to start from a 0 point. They basically saw this crisis as a beginning to really think about radically changing the system. But as the months progressed, I've noticed that this kind of enthusiasm has kind of disappeared, and we see more like reinforcements of the current system that the governments are trying to do, keep giving handouts to businesses, keep trying to get big businesses to survive, just like happened in 2009, etc. And I think that's kind of a shame that this positive energy is kind of disappearing.
Okay. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes, and also we brought actually the aspect of thrive and hope, and linked it also to the aspect of awareness, changing of awareness, so that a sufficient amount of people are actually believing in the fact that the broken system can be changed if we change ourselves and if we change actually our communities as a whole. And that's a question of awareness. So we emphasize that as a need, and that in parallel we can still philosophy about changing the current system for those who are not able to change their awareness. So because that's an evidence that we will still face a large majority of people who still abide with the laws of maximization, because they believe that it's so important for them to maximize their own life rather than look at the collective aspect. So that's an important aspect that we took in our discussion as well. Okay. About the feasibility.
And the fact that we are more and more getting further into survival mode, and we are just promoting, sustaining what currently is.
And we should get out of the survival mode and move towards the thriving mode. Can I have perhaps
probably
some of the younger generation here present? What did they share? Like Arne was sharing, we also discussed in our group, there was someone saying that personal well-being at the moment is very important because during Corona, we need to take care of ourselves now because it's a difficult time. So other youngsters here that want to comment on that?
Yeah, honestly, I want to answer.
Yeah, Sarah?
So we actually were talking about nature and sustainability, how we think that is so important for sure right now because we're really like polluting our earth. And we were actually talking to someone that was actually living a nomadic life, which was Marike here. And it was so interesting. Like she has been living like this for 16 years, just in a van without running water and all of these things. And it's just so inspiring that she's actually trying to do something for our earth. And I for sure want to do that in the future too. And that's why also that I've been reading a lot of books about veganism and how animal agriculture is so polluting, one of the most polluting industries right now. So that's really interesting to me. And that's why I've been vegan. I'm also trying to use less plastic by going more zero waste. So, because I've seen that all of our food is packaged in plastic. All of our cosmetics are packaged in plastic, and I'm just really trying to be more conscious about this. And we've been also talking about spirituality, like meditating, how much fun that actually is. Like it sounds kind of like like I've never really heard a lot about it, but then I've tried it like a couple of weeks ago, and I've been loving it. It's so calming and so relaxing. So yeah, that was that.
I'm clapping with my hands. You see it.
Yeah, I see it.
Really nice. Okay, I don't know how to change it now, but okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for sharing this with us. I think it's really important, and I'm glad to hear that people of your age are doing these kinds of things and these efforts. Yeah. And Marieke inspiring you for that life.
Ik ben dan misschien wel niet meer zo piep als de rest die bij groep zat. De helft was piep en de rest wat minder.
Ja,
we hadden een groep van 4. En ik heet
I will translate
Babs.
Afterwards in English. I will translate the
sorry.
summary afterwards in English. If you don't mind in English, because some of the people that
I will
joined,
do it in English.
not,
sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I'm here under the name of Babs Huning, which is my partner. I'm Nicolien. And we were in a group of 4. Half of us were elder than 25, let's say it. And the rest was 25 or younger. And one of the main things that interested us in the first question was the fact that I wrote it down. Nature is the primer economy. And if you put that first and you put everything that you do against that fact, well, then it's really simple. It's not simple to change it, but you have how do you call it? In Dutch, we say a toetssteen. And that was one thing we, after that we went on to not eating meat, going for veganism, then to laboratory grown meat and stuff like that. And also the fact that we will all start with ourselves, trying and not trying, because trying is nothing. You try to jump, you don't jump, it's trying. But we are all thinking about it, talking with others. And I think that's the first step in raising awareness with others. Mm-hmm. And that was what we all, agreed upon, I think. So it's, we have a lot to do.
Thank you, Bob, for sharing this with us. Yeah.
Yes.
Nature at the center. Other people want to share what was discussed in their meeting rooms?
Yeah, I would like to add something. If
Yes, Sarah, go ahead.
So for me, in my group, we were like 4, and I was the only oldest one. So not that I'm feeling old, but so there were 2 students and one like also around 25, I guess, an IT man. And it was very, for me, it was, yeah, for me, it's resonating, and also in my personal life. So I also started the Nature Works Collective a few years ago. So also in my professional life. So it's not very easy, but I'm still hopeful and a believer of it. So it was not totally new, but it's resonating. But what I really understood in the younger people of my group, and it's also something that I also feel every day around me, also in companies, organizations. It's a kind of lack of sense of urgency. And I understand that. So they also said like, also like they don't believe, and I understand that they don't believe that because we don't see it yet enough. So they also said we don't believe that people and companies will go for that degrowth model. So we are too selfish. People are too selfish. So it's still the assumption, it's still a belief of people that we as a human being, that we are selfish. I know that in our essence, we are not selfish, but we have learned to be selfish. So, but it's very interesting to hear those people, the younger people of my group, how they still see and look at the world. I also was like that, so I'm not blaming them. So totally not. I'm also, I was the same way. I also was thinking the same way when I was younger. So they also said like, yeah, maybe we should need a kind of systemic crisis. And then I asked, do you see today also like a kind of systemic crisis? But for them, it's not huge enough. It's not yet there. It's like, okay, there is a crisis, but it's not big enough. So the sense of urgency is not there. Also the lack of unity that we don't have. So that was also there. So they see that there is a lack of unity today, and I have to, I understand their feelings. And they also said like, we still need some more stimulation from higher up. So, and I think that's the reason why people are still today like stagnizing, I don't know in English. Stagnate, yeah, voila. So I think that's also, I see around me why people are stagnating, because we are all waiting for the stimulation from higher up. So that's yeah, so there were like, that's a few things that I noted, and it was very interesting. So it's also kind of confirmation also for me that we are still have kind of, different views, and it's normal. And we really need kind of a change of mindset, and it takes time. And that's also something that they said, like, it's too huge. It will take too long. And we don't believe in it because when will this happen? It's like, it's nice, it's a nice view, and if you listen to that, it's very nice. But so yeah, that's very interesting to see that the younger people, even them, because I was like, how do you do it in your daily life? Do you think that your own personal things that you can do, that they have impact? And they say, yeah, we do some things, but still it's not impacted enough. It's not huge enough to have impact on the higher
level.
On the higher level. So
for yourself, because you were saying in the beginning, what are you doing with nature walks or something? You mentioned
for nature work. So no, for me, I've 5 years ago, I've been the sustainability manager for a long time in the plastics industry. So but I felt for years like it was not my place. So long story. And then 5 years ago, I also was like for more than 20 years busy with the Eastern philosophy. So then 5 years ago, I said I will take a sabbatical and go to more into depth into the Eastern philosophy. I followed microbiotic lessons. I do some Meridian, Qigong lessons and so on. So for me, it was coming home. So it's also the language of nature. So by that time, I was like, I've learned so many models, design thinking and so on. I don't name them all, but all those models have some value, but it was not holistic, not complete enough. So for me, 5 years ago, I finally found the language of nature. And then I said, I want to translate that language of nature into business models. So where I came from, I'm coming from business environment. So I want to translate that. So that's my, very shortly, my way of transformation. So it's still under process. So I'm still learning, and it's still, so I'm happy to see that there is a lot of going on today. So that is growing also, that's important. And so that's, so in my daily life, yeah, I'm trying to inspire as well people, and to see like, how can we go for that drivability. Okay. So I'm totally resonating tonight. So I'm really happy to hear that we are growing. That's
about growing. We use the term existential growth towards well-being. So we still, in our group, we still use the word growth, but an existential growth towards well-being. So not in economic terms and GDP and so forth.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a hard one.
I've seen Neil. Neil wanted to say something.
Yeah. We're going to move to someone else to have the diversity.
Sorry,
but thank you for sharing it. It was really interesting and inspiring. Neil, it's you who wanted to say something?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Neil in Leuven with Anne. We were two of the oldies with Kees in our group, and we had three youngies. We had Desi, Savina, and lost one? Maxime. Sorry, thanks. And it was very evident that Anne and I have both jumped ship from the current system as best we can to try and make transformative change. Kees is in that process of trying to bring that new economic model. And we were very concerned because of our very strong agreement with Kees that we are in societal collapse, we are in economic collapse. We have to find new models. So we asked the younger people, how are they coping with that? And I'd like to perhaps let them say some words on that. But the frustration coming through about being sort of trapped in a system, not being able to change that system. I think Babs was saying that too, that the inability to move that, to shift that inertia, that momentum, because of the systemic challenges. Kees then brought in his recognition of the system being hidden from view. You can't just sort of peel your head open and see yourself. You can't just peel the system open and see it. So it's an
unless you take the right blue pill. If you take the blue pill, you can see it. No, the matrix.
Well, some of us have been on this journey longer and have taken a few pills and jumped out. But no, the process, I think, what we were trying to get to, I think, and we didn't quite get the 5-minute wrap up, was that there needs to be this intergenerational exchange from those of us that have been trying to create more conscious shifts despite the resistance from the system, and those who have the potential now to be learning and bringing their new gifts and new energy to this. And if we can get that vertical alignment with a more conscious approach, I think we'll make a lot more movement forward. I didn't get a chance to agree with what Shinta and others were bringing around the consciousness element, but I would have brought that in at the end to try and wrap up. And I'm interested to hear the youngsters from our group, if they've got anything else to add, because they're locked down in this pandemic, but they're also aware of the systemic challenges ahead.
Maxime, Savina, and I don't know who the third was. Maybe you want to...
Desi.
So you have to unmute Maxime or Savina or...
I think Desi was the third one.
Yeah, that's correct.
Desi.
But I don't know how to say. I'm not coping very well. Yeah.
But based on what Neil was sharing with us from a younger point of view, your point of view, so how you're coping with the changes, systemic changes, Corona, etc.
As a young person, I definitely don't like the changes in the lockdown, but I don't understand exactly what you asked me.
And you're also quite difficult for me to understand. Sorry, the line is not very clear.
Then it's okay. Let someone else speak. It's fine.
Okay. Maxim's or Savina? Maxim's coming. Yeah.
Okay. So
can we see you too, or you have no webcam available?
Sure.
Thanks.
You see me?
Yeah.
So I was talking about health, that the government is, I think that the government should be focused more on the health and the immunity of the people, but instead they don't want social interaction. That's, for me, that is quite a difficult one, because I like social contacts. And for my mental health, it's
important.
Yeah, it's important. And also the health for your immune system, for eating healthy. They do not encourage that. They just want you to sit inside, and they also don't encourage to sport outside and challenge your immune system. And yeah,
I think the only one that did was Boris Johnson. He said we need to eat healthier, we need to lose weight. So that was something that he launched in the UK, which actually was a good thing. Yeah. But indeed, Belgian government is not following, or the Dutch government either, I think, with that advice. And you think it should be done as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thumbs up. Okay, we still have a couple of minutes. Are there still groups that we didn't hear? Then I invite them now. I see Eric. I don't know which group he was in. Kimberly, Yasser, Farben, Christoph.
A couple more people.
Yeah. Sixten. If not, I'm just going to wait for one more minute. So is there other things discussed? I shared a bit of our group.
I have the impression that the people are tired.
If I can add something.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, go ahead if you want to talk. I was in the group with Sarah and Kevin as well with, where is he? Yasser, I think.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that I was talking about with Sarah and Kevin was that a lot of the younger people feel like they're not connected, and everything that they try to initiate to make a change doesn't have a big effect, because we feel that, like, even if somebody says, oh, I'll take a glass bottle instead of a plastic bottle, I think there's not enough like unity within this across the globe, that everybody needs to make a smaller change, and everybody feels like they're doing a change, but it's not making that big of an effect, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. And they feel like a lot of the higher up powers, the governments and all of that, should do more to really stimulate people to really make a change, because as a younger myself, I feel like nobody is challenging me to live more sustainably or to do anything to make a change. Like, a lot of people still live the same way that they did 10 years ago without even realizing that if we keep on going like this, in, I don't know, 50, 60 years, we'll be in really, really deep trouble.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask Kees and Shinta to give feedback on what you heard here in these sessions. So the things that were shared with us, Kees and Shinta, feedback from you, please.
Shin, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm just gathering my thoughts, and you might bump into the silence that I just. Well,
intergenerational issue has been discussed as well now. The power has been discussed.
Well, maybe something that is repeatedly put on the table, and it's kind of worrying me in a certain way. It's the young people that feel that they don't have enough impact. Just shortly summarized in my own words. And it makes me really sad to hear that. But I wanted to offer maybe a broader perspective, and also maybe a very practical suggestion. So I think that I heard one of the participants say that we're on the brink of a societal collapse. And that's of course very true. And then also thriving needs a society on the brink of societal collapse, because that's the most healthy situation for an individual to start acting, to start changing and start. But it's a very painful time to be in and also with. And our minds are, particularly our reptile brain, it just starts seeking in its survival modus to answers in the domains that we already know. So it seeks safety, psychological safety. And that is exactly the domain that is now unraveling. So we seek for answers, more concretely, we seek for answers in the traditional thinking about economics for renewal, and it's impossible. And I really wanted to say, to call it, to give it words, that I think we put this in the book like this: a new economy is not economic. So we really need to start availing of all the other knowledge and experience and wisdom that is also there on our way towards renewal. And the distrust that we feel, and also within my little breakout group, we discussed this. We feel the need that we feel that we need to have some sort of resilience before we can act, or we need to have some kind of reserve before we can act. And there's a general distrust in society towards abundance. And it's to me a testimonial of a broken society. So as new economists or thinkers about the economy or change makers, we need to reframe our role, and that is to become a healer of the broken society. So we really need to be doing very different things. And this is not, somebody called it romantic. These ideas are not just romantic or spiritual or whatever. It's very hard work to deal with a society that is traumatized. And it's very hard work to offer tools that are trauma informed. So I just wanted to offer that approach. And to facilitate that, Kees and I just gave this series a course. And on the last day, we put people together in what you could call silly name, maybe like an AA meeting, where you share what you are worried about, you share what you're busy with, you share what you're doing, but you also share what you need and the help that you need, the support that you need, the tools that you need, the money that you need, whatever you need to make your project work. And the energy that was unlocked, that just, it spoke for itself. You know, we had, the second day was full of sharing knowledge, but this day was so much more impactful because people were just doing it and they were helping each other. And so we need these communities. So Rethinking Economics Antwerp, our Thrive Institute here in the Netherlands, and all these, we need to set up these intervision laboratory settings, facilitated in a safe way, where you have the intention to put your project in the midst. You know, this is what I'm dealing with, these are my doubts, this is what I need help with. And then these little groups that start helping each other, and then we form networks. And then you don't have to have on your own the impact that you think you need to have. So you don't need to become a fixer, or that's the hero trap. You don't need, that's very unhealthy. Psychologically, there's a name for it. It's masochistic, actually, to do so. So, but we need to reach out, and we only need to do our own little parts. And again, that is hard work. There's nothing romantic about that. So I hope that I've reflected.
I think it was very valuable what you were sharing with us. Thank you for that. Really, really, really. Yeah. Healers of a broken system. That's what we need. Yeah.
I would like to conclude with a story. It's one of the many stories I've learned from practicing Buddhism in the last 30 years. And there's this story that after the Buddha attained enlightenment, Siddhartha, he traveled around in India for 15, 20 years. And he traveled around with his 5 first monks, and amongst that monks was Ananda. And Ananda was supposed to be the most clever of all monks. And in Buddhism, there is no such thing as good or evil, or the devil and God. But the Buddha had a adversary which was called Mara, and you can treat Mara as devil in Christianity. So Mara is greed. Mara is suffering. And one night, when the Buddha is lying asleep in a cave, Ananda is keeping guard because Mara might come by. And of course, Ananda doesn't want Mara to get by because Mara is bad news. And of course, one evening Mara drops by at the cave, and Ananda starts screaming, go away, get out. But we don't want you here. And he wakes up the Buddha. And the Buddha gets up, walks outside the cave, and sees Ananda shouting against Mara. And he kindly pushes Ananda away and invites Mara in for tea. And he takes Mara into the cave, puts him a kettle of tea, and gives him a hug. And they start talking. And this is the basic story of embracing your suffering. Compassion, self-compassion, compassion for others is that you invite whatever suffering there is for tea. You don't fight it. You don't ignore it. You invite it for tea. And I think tonight we've been a group where I experienced that we invited Mara for tea. And because we were together, we were able to do it, because it takes balls to invite Mara. And I think I've heard, especially from the young folks in our group, I heard a lot of acknowledgement of the suffering. And I think that is the most fundamental, profound start that we need to make. We need to acknowledge the fact that we're in shit. And I think tonight we did. So, and that is, well, exactly in line with what Shinta says. I think communities like this are the lifeline to transition. We need each other. We really need each other. And we need each other more than ever. And we need each other via Zoom like this, and we need to see each other in physical conditions. But we need each other. So for me personally, it's been a really humbling experience. So I really want to thank you, Eddie, and Xander for hosting this, because it's important. It is really important that we work together, and we shared experience in honesty, and I think we suffered collectively, and I think it sounds really heavy, but it's a start for the healing that Shinta is mentioning. First, you have to acknowledge that you suffer before you can heal yourself, and tonight is a fantastic start. So namaste.
Namaste. Thank you very, very much, Shinta and Kees. Can I ask you to put 1 or 2 words in the chat box as how was this evening for you? What kind of a feeling do you have now? What do you take with you? Just a kind of emotion you're going through and share it in the chat box as a super inspiring, connecting, eye-opening, namaste. Gratefulness, joy of reconnecting. Happy to see everyone here. Not alone. Wholeness.
That is the essence, eh, Maxime?
Yeah.
You're not alone, eh?
Yeah, that is the essence. Okay. While you're writing your text as a kind of conclusion of this session, I'm gonna ask Xenia to share one last slide before I express also my gratitude to the speakers. Is that the book, and you see here the Dutch title, but it's also going to be in English. Thrive Foundations for a New Economy will be available from March, I hope. Is that correct, Kees? So we're end of March. And then there is, I will also like to make an announcement, because Xenia, you already stopped the sharing, but the next slide I also would like to share, which is then the really final one, is that we have, we're very fortunate because on the 20th of January, we have Daniel Christian Waal, who will be our guest speaker. And in March, the 10th of March, we will have Hans Klaus. If you would like to be informed about what we organize, you can or go to the Facebook page of Rethinking Economics Antwerp, or you can connect with Imagine Life. I don't know if we have that. We'll put perhaps the links in the chat box. And then we're going to call it a day. I'm very pleased to have this mixture of audience of different ages. I think it was also inspirational in these breakout rooms that I should have kept longer a bit. Apologizes for that. And I would like to wish you all a thriving future. Be part of it and also make it happen. And by getting connected in different organizations, communities, working together, I think we can really make a difference. So thank you all, and maybe you can unmute yourself and we can give a very warm applause for Shinta and Kees. And I don't know if you're gonna hear it, but yeah, this was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the diehards.